Hi, today we will introduce you to the world's biggest mutual funds. They are index funds, and while being extremely popular around the world, they are still a very small category in India. As the name suggests, an index mutual fund invests in stocks that imitate a stock market index, like the NSE Nifty, BSE Sensex, etc. These are passively managed funds, which mean that the fund manager invests in the same securities as present in the underlying index in the same proportion and doesn't change the portfolio composition. Hence, they have a lower expense ratio as compared to actively managed funds. Let's say that an index fund is tracking the NSE Nifty index. This fund will therefore have 50 stocks in its portfolio in similar proportions. An index can include equity and equity-related instruments along with bonds. The index fund ensures that it invests in all the securities that the index tracks, while an actively managed mutual fund endeavors to outperform its underlying benchmark. An index fund, being passively managed, tries to match the returns offered by the underlying index. But does this mean that all the index funds give the same return as the index that they track? The answer is that they give similar returns, but there is a difference. This difference is because of two reasons: tracking error and expense ratio. Let's talk about the tracking error. In simpler words, tracking error can be defined as the difference between an investment portfolio's returns and the index it imitates. It is calculated by taking the difference between the returns of the index fund and the return of the benchmark index. The less the tracking error, the better it is for the mutual fund. Now let's talk about the expense ratio. Expense ratio is defined as the annual fee that an investor is charged for the management of his or her funds. The expense ratio is generally the cost of any mutual fund. Hence, lower it is, better it is for the investors. Expense ratio is calculated on the overall fund value. Hence, an increase of 1% can reduce your profit by 10%. Now let's talk about the top 5 index funds based on their 5-year returns. We will also tell you about their 1-year return and their expense ratio. So as you can see on the chart here, HDFC Index Fund Direct Plan Sensex Plan gave a 1-year return of 37.36% with 5-year return of 14.15%, and the expense ratio stands to be at 0.2%. Nippon India Index Fund Direct Plan Sensex Plan Growth, that is second on the list. Again, the expense ratio is somewhere around 0.15%. 1-year return stands to be at 37.2%, and 5-year return is very close to the last one that we spoke about, 14.13%. Next on the list is Tata Index Fund. This is again Sensex Direct Plan, 36.38% of 1-year return, 14.04% 5-year return. 0.84% is the expense ratio. Next is Taurus Nifty Index Fund, 41.84% of 1-year return, 13.91% of 5-year return, and 0.91% of the expense ratio. And lastly on the list is IDFC Nifty Fund Direct Plan Growth, 40.38% of 1-year return, 13.75% of 5-year return, and 0.16% the expense ratio. This was all for today's video. For more such updates, please subscribe Groww's YouTube channel. We should remind you that these are only for educational purpose and they are not buy or sell recommendations. Bye-bye.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing. Please read the risk disclosure documents carefully before investing in equity shares, derivatives, mutual fund, and or other instruments traded on the stock exchanges.